You're listening to The Dating Den with dating and relationship badass and best-selling author Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important dating, sex, and relationship issues you want to know about. So if you're ready for true talk that's authentic and unfiltered, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Dating Den with Jayson Gaddis. How to use conflict to unlock lasting attraction and intimacy with men. Ladies, I am here today to deliver you proof in real life that there are high-quality men who are really smart and really talented and are experts at being high-quality men. And the man that is here to prove to you that real quality men exist is Jayson Gaddis. He's an author. He is actually a relationship expert, and he's a coach who teaches people the one class we do not get in school, which we should, how to do relationships. He has one of the most in-depth and comprehensive relationship ed programs. He trains relationship coaches as well all over the world. He's got fans and followers across all the social channels. He's got a super awesome podcast called the Relationship School Podcast with over 5 million downloads, 330 episodes and counting. And he is just publishing his brand new book, Getting to Zero, which will be out in October 2021. So if you're listening to this before, put it on your list of things to do. And if you're listening to this after, well, it's available now. How convenient for you. Jayson, welcome to the Dating Den.
Thanks, Marni. Good to be back and good to hear your voice again.
I had to say that at the beginning because I think one of the most common things I hear around this topic is, of course, why don't men do this work? Why are women always the one doing the work? Yeah. There are no high quality men where I live. What the hell even is a high quality man? And what I love is, there are quality men and they are doing this work and they do want to learn how to do relationship. So let's just get started with, we're just going to go right to the heart of it, which is conflict.
Yeah. Relationship
conflict. So I was telling you before we started recording, I'm going to live in an RV with my husband. We did a 5-week experiment living together in 36 feet. And we recognized the gaps, right, around conflict. Yeah. And my big mindset shift that I always want to talk to people about is like, conflict is not bad. It's an opportunity. So tell me, how do you actually define conflict? What is it? What does it mean? And how do we handle it well?
Yeah, I love that experiment, by the way. I aspire to do that someday. That's so cool. My definition of conflict is a rupture, a disconnection, or an unresolved issue between two people. And a lot of people think conflict, it conjures up like fighting, arguing. But conflict can be the stuff we're not saying. It can be feeling criticized by someone, and then we get activated and we don't know how to address it. We're all experiencing conflict throughout our week. And it's just a matter of, like you're saying, can we see it as an opportunity to learn about ourselves, learn about our activation, and more importantly, learn how to work through it, especially with the people we care about.
So talk to me about this, because I am here to dispel myths. I feel like when women are dating or in relationships or even in marriages, they're like, oh, well, if he were better, right? Like if he were this ideal, imaginary ideal, then we just wouldn't have conflict. Right? Like it's his fault, or that it's possible to find this person and he's your one because there's no conflict. Therefore, you can quote unquote trust him and feel safe. Teach me, wise one, about this.
Okay. Yeah. To me, it's just another version of blame. Blaming him for not being able to do it or making you feel a certain way or whatever. And look, we're all difficult, including you, me, the person that's listening here. We're all challenging when it comes to interpersonal dynamics, especially if we live together a long time or we join forces in a business or we're family. We're going to have conflict, and it's okay. It's not a problem. And it is a very common thing to look outside ourselves to get the resolution. Like if they would just change or do the thing, then everything would be better. And that's very understandable. And sometimes that might actually be true. But when we keep it outside of ourselves, we miss this amazing learning opportunity to understand more about our nervous system and what makes it tick, and how do we actually really be there for ourselves, and how do we communicate our needs to someone else who might get annoyed by them. It's a real dance. And I think that's the power of partnership or intimacy and deep connection is we got to figure this out. And, the people that are strongest and the most successful relationships I know are willing to embrace conflict, and they just learn to get better at it and better at it over time.
And I think like highlight underscore, right? It's about learning to get better at it over time. I probably say on every other episode of this show, the data that the Gottman Institute produced, which is that 69% of challenges in a long-term relationship are perpetual, right? Meaning like we talk about the same issues over and over again. And so it's our responsibility with the right person who will join forces in us to figure out how to do that better and better. One thing that came up, we just had a live retreat for our year-long program clients, and I'd love for you to talk about this. We talked about how embedded in conflict are unspoken assumptions. Like we didn't even realize that we make these assumptions about someone when we're mad at them or when we think they've let us down. What can we do to have more direct communication to get back to what you call, that zero place where you feel, juicy and connected again, right? Like you're in zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you give me an example of what would be a common assumption we would make? So that would help me.
Yeah. So so here's one. It's not a dating one, but I used it at the retreat because I think it is a relationship. And so the story I make up before I didn't have a house where my children would come as young adults. I'm divorced, right? And so the story that I made up when my daughters didn't text me about whether or not they're going to have dinner at my house was that they like their dad better. Mm-hmm. They don't respect me.
Right.
I made up all these assumptions, right? Yes. That they were taking advantage of me. They didn't appreciate me, blah, 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 right? So going into any communication, whether it's a text or responding or whatever it is, every conflict, I'd made all these stories up that 100 million% were not true. And so I would go into those conversations or those conflicts guarded, like protected, needing to be right. So that's just one that came to mind to me over the weekend.
Yeah, it's a common one. I think what you're speaking to also is that we read into silence, right? Silence is actually one of the worst conflicts is if someone doesn't text us back or they don't come back around and try to repair and reconnect. It can, especially with those of us who have a trigger or an insecurity around abandonment or rejection, we have a sensitivity there. So it's going to be even more activating for us. But silence is kind of brutal, and we do just make up shit in the space.
Yeah.
So something we can do, depending on who we're with, I prefer the ownership and vulnerability approach, which is I might say, hey, friend or daughter or whoever, I'm noticing I'm making up a story that, because you haven't gotten back to me, I'm making up a story, and the story isn't really that positive. I'm open to sharing it if you want to hear it, but it doesn't matter that much. I'm just making up stories. And when I don't hear from you in a certain time frame, that's what I do. And one thing you can help me with is just getting back to me in a timely manner, and then we agree upon what that timely manner means. Is it a day? Is it an hour? What is the realistic thing that we get to ask for? And if I know you have a sensitivity there, then I'm going to be considerate of your feelings. I'm going to be, it might be a little annoying for me, like, oh God, but I care more about you and your feelings than my own comfort really in that moment. And so I want to consider you. And so I'm going to make a gesture. I'm like, yeah, I think I can do that. But we don't want to ask someone to agree upon something they actually can't or won't do. So it has to be realistic.
I love that idea. We were talking about at the end of communications when in context to say like, so what's an agreement we can make about that? right? Like, so that person can say, well, I can't do an hour, right? But I could do 10 minutes or whatever it is. Does that work for you? And I love getting that closure because we talked too about like in conflict, a lot of our listeners, our ladies, someone had a great example. It was like, the guy was like, oh yeah, someone was asking like, so what are you looking for in a relationship or something? It was like the second date or maybe the third or whatever. And the guy was like, well, I have a list of things I want to get to know about you and I'll get to know that. And the woman was like, oh, okay, like smile, okay. And later she was like, I don't know what this guy's looking for. And she was afraid to follow up, right? To like ask the next question, right? To get that clarity. Why do people do that when they're in communication?
Like, why do they
not follow up? Yeah, you're like, oh, I was so brave, Jayson. I talked to that guy. You know, I said I did it. I said, what are you looking for? And then he said, oh yeah, well, I'm figuring that out as we go. And then she's like, okay. Why do people sort of like step short of like actually getting their needs met?
Yeah, I mean, I think we get scared, right? It's so vulnerable to ask. It's so vulnerable to put ourselves out there. And we're very sensitive to rejection. And again, silence is rejection for a lot of us. So then we're in our reaction and we're not in our courage anymore. And we forget what we want and we might judge ourselves as too much or too needy. And so we just pause there. We're just like, fuck it, I'm going to bag it. But I just want to relate here. Like when I'm asking, for example, my book's coming out, as you said, and I'm asking for support, right? I asked you for support. Hey, will you support me? And you're like, sure. And some people aren't even returning my emails, right? And so I have kind of like a three tries rule.
Yeah.
Wait a week. I reach out again. Wait a week. I reach out one last time. And it might be 2 times depending on who it is. And then if they don't get back to me, I'm done. I'm not going to keep extending myself and feeling bad. I like the assume that people are, it's not about me, that people are just too busy and preoccupied with their lives and they're very full. We're all so full right now. So I think we also need to watch that tendency to make it about us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was doing in that instance with my daughter. And just to circle back, so I did have that conversation with them. They're older, so I was able to share the story, and I even went back to where that story comes from, right? Of like not being important, like in my relationship with my siblings and trying to always be like the golden child, right? Like I was able to share that, right? And so it's amazing. And then ever since that one conversation, my daughter, and they're in their 20s, so it's totally not convenient for them to make a plan in advance, right? When you're in your...
Right.
But I think even when you're dating, there's people who just are like, I don't want to make a plan in advance. I'm really busy at work. I have to take care of my elderly parents and they come first, so I can't commit, right? And so what's really amazing with the right person, right? My daughter's like, I totally get that. I love that you're a planner. I love that you want to make good, healthy meals, right? And you don't want to order out. So yeah, we can totally do that. We can totally come up with that. And I think, that them understanding where I'm coming from created a deeper connection. And I think whether it's your children or your parents or a colleague or the guy you're dating or your husband, the right person wants to create connection and
exactly
create that and get to zero. So in your book, how do you define zero exactly?
Yeah. And I love, by the way, that you have that kind of connection with your daughters, and it's just powerful, right? To be able to have adult kids that can communicate like this. So well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. Getting to zero. So that's the title of the book, Getting to Zero, which is people like, what the hell does that mean? The subtitle is How to Work Through Conflict in Your High Stakes Relationships. And zero is, like Marni said, it's that happy place where we feel good and connected again. And it's our baseline. We want to have a baseline in any really strong relationship that feels safe, secure, and good. And of course, in high stakes relationships, we don't always feel that way because we're going to have conflict. And so that ruptures this baseline where we're feeling good. And now we feel bad. We feel at odds. We feel like we're against each other, not with each other. And again, all that is very normal. But can we get back to this place I call zero, especially if it's on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like super triggered, 0 being I'm not triggered. Can we just keep returning over and over back to our baseline and working hard as a team to get there, because it really takes two, and it's not up to one person to do that.
I love that. We were joking in the RV, like, you can't run away.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to be a team. Yeah. And we have to actually, and this is what's really interesting too, in this experiment we did, you have to redefine partnership, right? Like there's partnership. And I was thinking, I did the Facebook Live today and I was talking about, like, we throw around the word like partner, romantic partner, intimate partner. And, it's like, yeah, your partner, your plus one, your partner that you're going to share life with. But like really, when you're doing life with this person, like you're really partnership, right? Like how are you going to create a life of shared meaning together? And it really hit home when we were in the RV about, we need to be partners because we're doing a lot of moving around in tech and it takes two. And in the before, like I was good at my thing and he was good at his thing. And then we just hung out.
Yeah, right.
Right. And now it's like, wow, we created opportunities for conflict. And what I really love about zero is, for me anyway, I know that zero places when I feel like attuned with like my essential self, my like my soul, my like spirit feels like in zone. Yeah. And every time that I'm not in that space, I feel like I need to take responsibility, to start to become a better partner. And I know you talk about taking leadership in your relationships, and explain to everyone, what does it mean to become like a relational leader in your high stakes relationships?
Yeah. I mean, someone has to lead, right? If we get in a snag, you and I, and we're in a relationship, someone has to initiate repair, what I call repair and reconnection. And, it's, if we don't, we're both going to stay in our corners of the house with our arms folded, kind of pointing the finger. And we do that though, right? We kind of act like that sometimes, where we feel so mad at the other person. It feels like terrible to be that leader, to be the person that says, okay, I'm going to raise my hand first and say, here's where I fucked up. Here's where I'm kind of being a jerk. And this is what I did. And this is how I imagine it impacted you. So I'm going to try to empathize. I'm going to try to validate your feelings. We don't want to always do that because we're so hurt and angry. And a leader doesn't stay in the pouty position, all shut down and triggered or dissociated for days on end, right? It's like, no, I'm going to be an adult and I'm going to come back around because it's good for my partner, it's good for me, and it's good for us. It'll actually potentially help me get to a better place in myself.
Absolutely. So last night, while I was gone doing this retreat, my husband like managed the moving out of our furniture from this like 3,700 square foot home.
Okay. Wow.
I saw a video of it and I was like, it's cool. Like, I feel good. Like, this is a new beginning. And then I walk in my house, Jayson, and it's so funny. This is so me. The thing that made me cry was like, I love my office. Like, I designed it to be this like beautiful, amazing, like my woman cave. And I walked in there and it's empty. And I was like, and I like burst into tears. And I was just like really sad. And of course, who's in the house with me? Like, I need to blame someone. I am, after all, human.
Yeah.
And I turned into like I was just so mean. What I love about this is that I was so aware of, I was like, I am saying mean things. I am being like highly emotional right now. I am overtired. I am whatever. And I could see my husband trying to repair and I'd be like, no, like, then he'd say like something. I'd be like, no. And he's like, oh God, I could just tell he was like, I'm so scared. But he came back up around, I took a bath and he came back in and it was, I was like, I had that moment that you're talking about. I'm like, wait, like my man just busted his ass for, 3 days nonstop. This is in partnership of our dream and that kind of a thing. And I had to do that. I had to be like, okay, here's what's really going on for me. And I think it takes a lot of courage because the old me of years ago would have just been like, let's just be mad for a couple of days because I can't deal with my emotions. So I'll just blame you.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, here's another tip for the listener, is that when you're in that place, and I get there with my wife, of course, we get into, conflict and snags and distance, and a facial expression sets us off, or a tone of voice, and all of a sudden we're a little disconnected. And it's like, okay, the question becomes, how are we going to get back to a good place? How are we going to get back to zero? And can we be a team about it? And can we have agreements ahead of time? And then when we're in it, I don't recommend going to your corners of the house to sort it out yourself and then come back to the listener. It's like, that's one way, but you want multiple ways to get back to zero. Another way is to actually stay in the room and look each other in the eyes as much as you can, because when we don't, and we're driving in a car in a fight, or we're laying in bed and we're both staring at the ceiling, we're playing our movie, I call it. And that means that you're stuck on your memories of me. And when we don't look someone in the eye, we go into memory. And then all the negative memories and my associations of you and things like this moment are starting to stack. And then I can get even more shut down and more angry. So it's really powerful if you can maintain eye contact as much as possible, because it keeps you out of that loop of stacking on old conflicts.
I'm just laughing because my husband he went downstairs and he came back up, and I was laying down, he like got in my face to make eye contact. And then I was, of course, like, I melted and I was like, ah. But what's funny is, like, 10 minutes later, I was like, were you watching some YouTube videos downstairs about like how to deal with your crazy wife? So maybe he watched your video, because he,
Right.
he was like, yeah, totally. Because he was like acknowledging and validating. But the eye contact thing is really amazing, right? Because then it's like I'm seeing the person, not the story.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really powerful thing. Tell me about the other, I know there's 4 things sort of like in becoming a relational leader. Like, what are the other pieces around that? And what are some things our listeners can kind of start to take on?
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing your listeners are already moving in this direction because they're listening to you and they've trained with you or studied with you, and they're learners, right? So one of the first things we have to do is admit that we're limited in our ability to get to zero. Because when we admit and we're not arrogant, we just go, yeah, I have some things to learn here. I don't quite know how to handle myself. I don't quite know how to handle my family member when we're upset. I don't know how. That's the first step, admitting that you got something to learn. Then we can take responsibility, another step, because that's easing into personal responsibility. And we decide to learn. And we decide to listen to your podcast or mine, or we decide to read a book. And we start to take responsibility for getting a different outcome, which is huge. So, I mean, those are kind of the basic steps, is can we just get in the driver's seat of our own learning and become, I don't know, the person that we're asking the other person to be.
I love when you say, like, admit that we need to learn. I sort of think about this, like, for me in conflict, whether it's with, whether you're having a conflict with a high stakes colleague, right, ladies, or a guy you're dating that you're really liking, maybe you're not serious yet, and there's a bump, whatever, or your parents or your kids, whatever it is. I think that there comes this point where, like, that admit is almost like a surrender moment, right? It's like, I surrender, right? Like, I don't need to be right. I don't want to win. I want to be connected, right? I want to be at that thing you call zero.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful place of noticing, and I'm all about energy these days and things like that. And so that's what I'm thinking when you're saying that admit. It's like, okay, like, I'm out of my zone. I'm out of my essence. Like, I clearly can't control this. I think so many of our listeners want to control the conflict to feel safe, right? And so then when you just go, okay, I surrender, what can I learn? What's this here to teach me? Then it's so much more empowering, right? Like, you're taking responsibility, but you're not like, fine. Because what do you do when people say, like, like, I always have to initiate the repair, or like, why am I always the one having to take responsibility? I do it at work every time. I want him to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What do you do when you hear that?
Oh, totally. Well, it's there's a couple of important things to comment on here. Number one is we want our relational space and our relationship to be fair. And fair isn't like I did the dishes and you didn't. That gets into scorekeeping, and it's sort of trite and not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about fair is like, it feels fair in that I do take responsibility for my part in an argument, something I did or didn't do. And you also take responsibility, because we actually can't get to zero if only one of us is taking responsibility. We won't get there. And then people get stuck on being with a partner who won't own their part, for example. And then the over functioner is like, I'll just keep owning my part and hope it somehow comes around magically. No, you're with someone who has a really hard time taking responsibility, and it sounds like they don't want to learn how to do that, and they don't see that it would benefit your relationship, and so they're not motivated. And then you might start to complain, and then that makes it worse. But I think fairness as a principle in a partnership is actually really important about the biggest things, the biggest movers, especially around conflict. The conflict repair process has to feel fair. And again, like I said, it has nothing to do with scorekeeping about things.
And fair means that both partners are 100% engaged in the goal or the intention of zero as much as possible.
And finding solutions to the problem. I always say, if when you partner with someone, you're like tying your boat up with them, and you're out in the middle of the ocean, and you're choosing to tie your boat up with this other person who's got their own little boat called their like independence and their neurosis and all their baggage is in their boat, and yours is too. And there you are, way out in the middle of nowhere on this adventure called life. It's not fair if I'm the one paddling all the time and you're just laying down.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to go in circles, and then I'm going to resent you eventually. That is just an unfair situation. What's fair is I can paddle for a while, and then I need to rest. Cool. I'm going to put my paddle down. Will you paddle? Or, hey, should we paddle together today?
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, we got a leaky boat. What should we do about it? It's not your job. It's our job. Maybe you're better at fixing the leak than I am. So we agree that, gosh, you know what? It feels fair it's better. You're better at that stuff than I am. So will you help us out here? Great. There can be just that metaphor can help people orient towards like how you want to travel through life together. It should feel fair.
Are you making RV metaphors on purpose?
Right. I should have used the RV. That's so true. What was I thinking?
I think we have two boats in an RV, right? And so, because we are out in the middle of nowhere sometimes. Yeah. So it's really cool when then there's those stakes. And that's what I really loved about the experiment, and why we decided to do it full time, is because, one of the things we were testing, Jayson, was like, does this bring us closer together or further apart? Right? Like, when we're in 36 feet, do we like fight more? And we're like, yeah, we can't be that physically close. Or do we get more connected? And what we realized is that because we're vested, and this is, I think, really relevant to your metaphor, we're really invested, both of us, in living this certain kind of life.
Yeah.
And so the stakes are high in the life that we want to live, because we both feel alive in it.
Yeah, and you sound aligned.
Yeah, totally. So both of us have the desire to like keep paddling, right? And knowing that like, some days you're tired and some days I have to do it and some days we have to do it together. And I think that sometimes in relationships, we're not conscious of that, what we're really looking for together, right? It's just sort of like, this is this thing, right, that we do. So how do you get aligned on, what does zero look like? Do you have a conversation where you say, here's what our zero looks like, here's how I feel when I'm with it? Like, how do you benchmark it? Or is it not benchmarkable because it's so fluid?
No, I think there is a benchmark, and it's about how we both feel. And there's a principle I call standing for three. So when we're out in our boats or in our RV together, we take a stand for myself. I take a stand for myself. I take a stand for you and your success and your health and well-being, et cetera. And I take a stand for us, which is the boat or the RV. Like, I'm taking a stand for all three. And when I take that kind of stand and that kind of position, we can't lose. And we're in alignment that this is what we agree upon. We're standing for three here. And I just think it's a powerful way to see it. And then our our zero, if you don't have to call it zero, it's just what's our good place, what's our happy place, what's our baseline that we both agree is, it's like the nervous system let down, and we feel safe enough to engage in our sex life. We feel safe enough to dream and aspire to go challenge ourselves with other things. That's how we all want to feel. It's a secure home base. It's a safe harbor. It's a launching pad. So I feel like that's what we're after. And it takes effort and learning and work to get there.
What do you say to people who say, yeah, me and my partner, we never fight. Like, it's great. We never fight.
Yeah. Neener a little bit. My parents had that relationship and they've been married still together. They're going on like 58 years or something. It's pretty amazing. And there's some parts of their relationship that are inspiring to me. And then a lot of it that I wouldn't want myself, because they got very good at compartmentalization and using sarcasm to kind of rip on each other and bicker. And it sort of works. But they don't really fight, and I never saw them fight. They always fought behind closed doors. But I wouldn't want that relationship. And then the people that are just saying, hey, we've got a great relationship, we don't ever fight, I'd say two things are going on there. One is you're still in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
And just wait. Or two, maybe you've been together 5 or 15 years and you still never fight. I would guarantee that you have a very shallow or superficial relationship.
Because
fighting and disagreeing and working through our differences is what gets us to deeper levels of knowing ourselves and each other. Like, there's a whole vast terrain of unexplored stuff that you two could actually go toward. It's really rare. I don't think I've ever met anyone that doesn't fight where I'm like, wow, I really want that relationship.
I asked you this question kind of like, because I just think I said at the beginning of the show, like, yet women are choosing who they pick for a partner because he does or doesn't, because we never fight, right? Or we're like compatible or whatever it is. And it's like, you're going for something that's not real. And so really, are you just avoiding conflict because of your past? Right. So I think it's such an important thing to know that like it's especially when you're dating, like how you're going to do differences is a huge, awesome experiment to see if this person is your person.
Yeah. And it's tricky in the beginning because we look so similar, right? We usually fall for someone who's like us. That's what it looks like on the surface is, we have so much in common and everything's like, the vibe is so good. And that's awesome. Enjoy it while it lasts. Cause a couple of years, you're going to start to polarize you're going to start to see your differences, and the true colors under stress are going to start emerging more and more. And none of that's a problem. That's when it gets really rich. And there's all this opportunity to learn about each other and yourself and really go deeper.
I love it. I was telling someone I've been with my husband for 13 years. And in this experiment, I got to learn so many new things about him. That's another reason why I'm so excited about it. I'm like, wow, I totally get you in a different way. Okay, let's talk about this before we peace out for today. When you think about like inner conflict and outer conflict, like that conflict when you're not in alignment with yourself, and then you have like the external disagreements. How do you live with that? And how do you know? People always ask me like, well, what's on my page and what's on his? What's something that is like a deal breaker and what is something that's fixable?
Okay, I'm hearing two questions in there in terms of this inner-outer conflict and then the deal breaker conversation. Okay. Can we take those real quick?
Let's take them. So, we got time.
Okay, real quick, the inner conflict, I write about that in the book, and basically what I'm saying is anytime you avoid an outer conflict, you're creating an inner conflict.
Ooh, I love it. Mic drop.
Because you're withholding your truth. You're not speaking up. You're scared to get into it with this person. And because you're scared, that energy has to go somewhere. And so it's going to stay stuck in you. And that tension and stress that now you're carrying isn't really good for you long term. And people do this because most of the listeners are going to probably relate with this. When you grow up as a little kid, you get the messages of who you should be and how you should be. And you're going to go towards what gives you the most amount of love and approval. And you're going to move away from parts of you that upset the big people, right? Or your siblings. And so you're going to act like a good girl. You're going to be a good boy, and you're going to get in line with the family values because less trauma happens and less distance happens, and less silence happens. And that creates an inner conflict right there. Is like between who you really are, your true self, and your strategic self that you're using to try to get love and avoid pain. So a lot of us, adult relationships provide us this amazing opportunity to repair that inner conflict, that core inner conflict that we feel where there's depression and anxiety because something feels off. So that's another reason, an incentive to be yourself in an intimate relationship, because it's an opportunity for you to repair that kind of childhood pattern of betraying yourself to keep connection.
That's deep.
So that's the first piece there. And then in terms of deal breakers, all of us have to decide. I like to make things like, there's a section of the book that's about value differences, and value differences tend to be deal breakers. Like, you're into vaccines, I'm not into vaccines. That could be a deal breaker, right? And that's a very contentious issue right now. Religion, political beliefs, those are kind of the obvious ones. But then it gets more subtle when we're talking about kids, no kids, where do we want our kids to go to school, or how we want to eat food in our house and how we actually care for our bodies. Now we could start to polarize some more and be like, wait, I don't like how my partner's taking care of themselves, and I think that's bad for you, and how much you're drinking or whatever. So we have to navigate all of these. And if it starts to impact the safety of the relationship, that's when it starts to become a deal breaker, I think, is if the security of the relationship gets threatened by the other person's behavior, or your behavior is threatening to the other person. It might be that someone has to move on because it's just the other person doesn't feel safe in the relationship anymore.
I think that's so brilliant. So then I have to ask you this. So how do you be with, like my husband, right? How do you help someone be with their triggers, right? Especially if they trigger you, right? So if your partner is being triggered and it's triggering you, do you take a deep breath? Do you walk away? Do you like, how do you do that? Because I think that's like, that should be like in the SOP, like a standard operating procedure of your relationship is an agreement about this.
Yeah. I'm triggered, and now I'm triggered by you, and then you get triggered by me being triggered by you, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then it kind of goes from there, kind of can snowball out of control. Well, again, someone has to be the relational leader and kind of hit the pause button and check in, and just be like, hold on a second. I don't like where this is going. This isn't good for me. It's not good for us. Can we pause for a minute and come back when we're a little more collected? And in the meantime, I'm going to try to be with whatever's coming up for me, and it's really shitty and uncomfortable, and I'm judging you right now, and I don't think I'm reliable to even talk to you right now. So I got to take space. That can be huge, just to take a little pause, a little break, and always come back. Always put a return time on it. Don't have open-ended, I'll be back, or I'm just need space, and then it's like days go by, right? You always want to put a time limit on that.
I love
because that can be threatening to the other person. But we both have to make a commitment to learn how to be with our triggers as just like a normal part SOP of our relationship, that we make an agreement that, look, I'm going to learn how to better be with uncomfortable shit going on over here. And at the same time, I'm going to be better at learning how to handle you when you're upset. Because gosh, I don't do a very good job of that. And I want to do a better job of that. And so I'm going to learn how. I'm going to learn how to empathize with you. I'm going to learn what your reassuring statements are that would help your nervous system chill out. I'm going to learn, is it better if I sit close to you or stand far away from you? Is it better if I send you a loving text? Is it better if I write you a note? Like, I need to know what you are like under stress and what helps your scared animal, is what I call it. Calm down,
That's so great. I think that's a learned skill. And it's so great when you can articulate, like you can shortcut that if you can articulate it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you know what you need, I'm a person who's like, I need you to go away, but then I need you to come back when I'm ready.
Totally. Like my wife needs empathy and acknowledgement from me, and I need reassurance from her.
That's so clear.
And we know that. And then we have to keep staying sharp. We don't get lazy here, though. Like what worked yesterday might not work today. So I have to okay, I got to keep, you're this amazing moving target that's kind of a mystery. So I got to keep learning.
Totally. It's an iterative process, right?
Yes,
like we
very
learn.
iterative.
Yeah, we learn from every single interaction. And that's, I think that's the beauty of having that person who is really standing for the three, right? For the unit that is their relationship. My last question? Yeah. What is your favorite thing that you write about in your book that just is like, I feel like if people learn this, hear this, like it will be the fulfillment of your purpose here?
Gosh, that's a tough question. Probably, I might say, okay, two things. I love that I share personal stories. I actually had a lot of more personal, kind of humiliating stories and things in the book, but my publisher made me take some of them out. But I think people learn through story and through people and their real journey. So I really love that. I think people will get a kick out of that, and they're funny and interesting. But probably more importantly is this tool I called LUFU that I teach at all our workshops and all our trainings. And LUFU, I can't remember if I shared it with you before, but it's an acronym that stands for you listen until, LU, they feel, F, understood, U. So in other words, I put the understanding in the other person's lap, and I say to my wife, honey, I don't understand you until you say that you feel understood. Because I used to defend myself when she'd say, I don't feel understood. I'd say, well, I do understand you. What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah.
Just like a dumbass. I was just so defensive. And I was like, wait, this isn't working for me. I need to get smarter here. So I think it's a great rule of thumb is that can you listen to someone until they feel understood? And there's 8 steps to that, which I won't unpack. But the essence is you validate, you reflect back, you take responsibility, you empathize. And by the end of it, they feel their nervous system chills out and they feel understood and it feels really fucking good. And then they reciprocate. You know, they now have the capacity to listen to you because they're relaxed because they feel understood and safe. And then this is a powerful life skill. Like if you can get this, like this is a permanent life skill upgrade.
It is. And it is staying with it is what I hear you saying, right? Like I think my husband, if you interviewed him, would be like, oh gosh, like he just wants it to be over. Not be
totally. Most of us do. That's
right. Not because like he's mad about like the fact that I'm emotional, but he's just like he wants me to be happy and he wants it to be over and he wants to like understand me. So I think that if you give your guy the benefit of the doubt that he wants that, if he's the right guy, and teach him what that looks like, it's a total trainable process that changes over time and is totally 100% doable if you can stay with your feelings.
Yeah. And if you're too triggered, you can always come back in 5 minutes, 5 hours and try again. And I'm telling you, when people apply themselves and learn and practice this, they get it. And then they seriously forever become a better listener.
Ugh, I love it. You're amazing. I'm so excited about the content of your book and what you're sharing. You have such practical, amazing tools. Like my nervous system calmed down just listening to you.
Thanks, Marni. So good hanging out with you, and thanks for all the amazing questions.
No, well, you know, I'm in it to win it too, right? We all are.
Yes.
Ladies, you can find out about Jayson's new book, Getting to Zero, in the show notes. We are so happy that you're here, and whatever you do, even when you're triggered, do it with some damn dignity. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to dwdvip.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.